Morning everyone, thank you so much for all coming today. So Nat runs these weekly and they're fantastic, so please, anyone who's here this week, check out our Eventbrite page, and we're running these every week for whoever wants to come. If you're just interested, if you're neurodiverse, please do join. We'd love to see you all, and look at our other events and workshops as well that we're running. So thanks everyone for coming and looking forward to it today, Nat.
Cool, thanks Matt. I'm Nat and I am the head of community. I have dyslexia and dyspraxia and autism diagnosed, but I also strongly resonate with dysgraphia. We wanted to do this session today because most people have heard of dyslexia, but what they think they know about dyslexia is either outdated or, quite frankly, a little bit wrong. And when it comes to dyspraxia, it's just as common as dyslexia, but no one seems to know anything about it. Particularly the two. Are the words interchangeable? Are they completely different? Are there overlaps? And today, not only am I going to try to explain to you, but also show you and give you some general empathy towards it. Typically, when we talk about neurodiversity, we talk about things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD, and that is mainly because they are by far the most common, but they're not the only ones. There's also dyscalculia, dysgraphia, could argue Tourette's, OCD, anxiety disorder, all kind of come under that lovely umbrella. This is our team, and just to give you a bit more background of what Exceptional Individuals does, we help recruit diverse talent. How do we get the best minds in the world who typically will find hurdles at the recruitment process into jobs? We support applicants. So if you're looking for work at the moment and resonate with being neurodivergent, come see us. We do assessments, workshops just like this, and also pop into organizations. But what I think makes us really unique is about 80% of our whole team are neurodivergent. So that's people with dyspraxia, with dyslexia, among others. Now, I always like to start off with the spiky profile. Why? Because I think it's good to have a working definition of what we mean by neurodivergent. When we think of things like dyslexia and dyspraxia, a lot of people think about deficits, things that you can't do, when it's not that at all. It's about the fluctuation of ability. So it's about being really great at some things and not so great at others. This is just an example, but you could be really great with maths, a great mathematical mind. But when it comes to creative thinking, you may struggle. Alternatively, you could be really creative, but find it difficult to put pieces together. If you see a massive difference in yourself or someone else's behavior, so judging by their kind of development, age, background, and if you think one skill set just doesn't quite make sense compared to the others, that's normally a sign of being neurodiverse. And today we will focus on a lot of the things which people find challenging because they tend to be where the most differences lie, but there are many, many benefits that we discuss in other presentations. What exactly is the difference, apart from being equally difficult and awkward to spell? In a nutshell, dyslexia describes a learning difficulty to reading, writing, and spelling. I deleted the word. Dyspraxia is used to describe difficulty in motor coordination skills. It's really important to know that this is a real nutshell, and there's so many nuances, and this alone isn't good enough to truly understand the differences. First thing I would like to ask you guys, do you miss out words when reading? Either you can put rarely on your phone, sometimes, almost always. Louise said at school she was told by a teacher that she was the cleverest dumb student she has ever known. Is that a compliment? You know, I'd go with it, you know. A lot of you have said sometimes it's quite a mixed bag. Now, when it comes to this is absolutely dyslexia. Whereas when you're reading, missing out words. People with dyspraxia can do it, but it's by far a dyslexic quality. Remember, dyslexia is about how the brain is processing written language, where dyspraxia is about motor coordination. So it could be seeing you can have the same effect, but the way you get to that effect can be different. On this one, I want you to rate your favorite sports in order. Trust me, there is a reason why I'm doing these fun games, to hopefully show you in a real world perspective what exactly neurodiverse is.
I can't stand sport at all.
I'm with you on that. Out of all subjects in school, PE was the one I dreaded the most. It was always the time, oh, I forgot my kit. But then they started this horrible policy where they'd make you wear secondhand clothes, and yeah, some smelly bad memories. This is really interesting. So most of you, we've got some big tennis fans in the group. And I asked this because this is one of the key differences. People with dyspraxia typically will not like sports, or might like sports, but might not necessarily be that good at them. And that again is about the coordination. So say you're doing tennis, you see the ball coming to you, and there might be like a slight delay in the brain, and you go and hit it and you miss it. This, unfortunately, is where dyspraxia originally got the outdated term clumsy child syndrome, and it's just a bit disorientated. Whereas dyslexia, doesn't affect it at all. You know, this is when there's like a very clear difference, dyslexia and dyspraxia. If you're not getting all the slam dunks with basketball, can't really blame the dyslexia too much. So Louise said, secondhand clothes and an hour detention for getting your kit at my school. The struggle is real.
Could I ask a question at all?
Yeah.
You said dyslexia is about like the processing of written language. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the brain not having information, seeing the information, and the way that it kind of takes it into the brain, it can kind of confuse it or kind of mix it up. Where dyspraxia is kind of like having the information, but being a bit slower to like drip out.
So like, I mean, for example, if I'm like taking in everything I'm reading, and then I just like have information overload and I know what the idea is, I know what I want to write, but I have trouble structuring it in an essay, maybe? Like, would that be kind of...
From that, just from what you said there, that sounds like more related to dyspraxia. Because remember, dyslexia is about taking in the information.
Which
dyspraxia is the opposite.
Which wouldn't probably happen without, like, because I've got ADHD. So like,
yeah, and
I've got
that's the really point you mentioned about co-occurring conditions. So sometimes having multiple things can skew the results a little bit, and it can counteract one. So you might think, I definitely have dyspraxia, but this isn't true to me. That's fine. You know, that's very, very normal. So do not take everything I'm saying as 100% gospel. This is in general, and that's basically the best way we can do these things, is look at the average and think, what is something that crops up time and time again?
Well, according to my doctor, I'm clumsy, so I'll take that one.
Yeah. All right, well, on question 3, the thing was, you plan to meet a friend at 12. What time will you get there? And some of you, no one has said, only one person said they'll be an hour early. I'm actually more like that, not because I'm super on it, but because I'm terrified of being late. So I always arrive probably about 30 minutes early. Quite a lot of you 10 minutes, 4 bang on time. Sadly, the most of you are about 10 minutes late or so. And 3 of you never turn up. We often have people at exceptional individuals turn up like a month early. I've even had some people turn up to one of my workshops a year early. My bad for arranging it so far in advance, eh? And this is a very typical thing which relates to dyslexia and dyspraxia. So again, there are some things that kind of overlap, but the reason why they happen are different, even though the output is the same. And this is commonly why people get so confused. So maybe with dyslexia, it's how you've retained the information. It can be memory retention, or with dyspraxia, it could be retrieval information. Whichever way it is, the results are the same. And this is why it's far better to arrive much, much earlier, because your concept of time is a little bit different. But then again, time is relative. Next one is sensitivity to touch. I want to ask, are any of you a little bit ticklish? And all you say is either never, and you slide the little thing with your finger, never to all the time. I am ridiculously ticklish. Like, you even kind of get a finger near me, I'll punch you in the face. And I don't mean that to sound aggressive, like I just can't help it. It's like, you know, an automatic reaction. Gotta love the hugs, jumpers, getting in touch. And how does this relate to motor, like these conditions? Well, people with dyspraxia tend to be extra sensitive. And there is an overlap with autism here, because autism is another one where people are hypersensitive. it could be how the brain interprets different signals. A jumper be completely fine, just a tiny bit itchy, but it will drive you absolutely mad. This can also relate to OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, where tiny little things can play on your mind and repeat. It seems to me, though, that this group is a very affectionate group. So as soon as the pandemic is over, hug away. Though Rihanna said she hates touch, and that's fine. It's just about knowing each individual. You could be a very caring person, not just emotionally, but physically just dislike touch. And again, that's more related to dyspraxia than it is dyslexia. People with dyslexia alone typically won't have any sensitivity abnormalities or differences. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. How do you remember your left from your right? And on this one, you can like type. Forgetting your left and your right is a real struggle to me. And the way I do it is, I do my hand like, that like L for left, and that one, no. When we think of these conditions, we always think, okay, children, but no, that affects adults just the same. You can be one of the smartest people in the world, but you can still forget your left and your right. And this isn't because you do not know the information. This is because of brain retrieval. The brain can sometimes, it's like, imagine you've got all this information in your head and it's in all different filing cabinets. And your brain, it has the information, it just forgets where it is. And I'm the same all the time. My things are always in the attic. I'm like, oh, typically. So we've got here, April said, I write with my right hand and wear my watch or Fitbit on my left wrist. That is a really important point. People with dyspraxia are far more likely to be left-handed. Or is it ambidextrous? You know when you can use both hands. So if you're the type of person to use different hands all the time or not really showing much consistency, that again is very much tied to dyspraxia, not so much dyslexia. Yes, thanks, April. Thanks, Imran. Appreciate it. We've got Louisa said, my mum and I struggle with left and right often. I say left while directing while driving, and I mean right. My mum gets it wrong and goes left, which I actually, when we wanted in the first place to go. I got confused just saying that, but yeah, very confused. So we've got here, I have a tattoo on my right. That's a great idea. I have a watch on one hand, right, thinking about it. Wedding ring on the left, good one. Don't have a problem. Wedding ring, left-handed, righty-tighty. Left makes an L. These are really great. Whatever works for you. And it's about finding new ways to create new neural pathways in your head, which links it up. So if you find it difficult to remember in a conventional way, it's not that you can't remember, it's that you've got to find a new pathway. And it's about time and time again. Because you've got short memory where the brain has like kind of quick access, like RAM in a computer. And then you've kind of got your like SSD drive where it's more long-term, and that's where you keep visiting. That's a bit of a nerdy reference for you though. What is something you all learned yesterday? Seems easy enough, right? What was yesterday? But do you ever have it when you really can't remember what you learned yesterday? You can remember you can remember last year, you can remember a week ago, maybe a month ago, but you cannot remember what you learned yesterday. I love learning. For people who think people who are dyslexic are not learners, that is completely wrong. But remembering what you learned yesterday, now that's a whole different ball game. James has said, I say my left and my right in Spanish to remember them in English. I like that a lot. So we got, I can't remember yesterday, about a different disorder. Yes, remember, I struggle with that. I have writing down, new piece of software. Geez, why am it so hard? Tottenham ain't great for football. Oh, that's what you learn. Good. And for the people with dyspraxia, I see what one of you said is there's so many different disorders that overlap, but with dyspraxia, it's about, again, retention and retrieval. So you can learn something, but the way that it's processed could be in a completely different area. And that, again, is one of the key differences. With dyslexia, People with dyslexia can have poor memory, but typically it's more about gaining the information to begin with. And dyspraxia is more about kind of giving the information backwards. With all of these things, it is always a little bit of a like simple way of saying it, but on the whole, they are some of like the most noticeable differences. And if you have both like me, that again gives a whole heap of other issues. I struggle with remembering. It happens quite a lot with films. My mum's the same. She watches a film and does not remember it at all. On the plus side, she was always really cheap for Christmas. I just get a 1 DVD and she'd be happy for the year. But now she's got Netflix, so happy days. Research, articulate my points in a cover letter for law firm. Great. It's really nice to see that we are not alone. This is a really hard question. And the question's on your phone screen. And it's how far from New York will it be when the 2 trains meet? And this is a complex maths problem. So yeah, good luck. I can see Claire going, yeah, I'll just sit this one out. I'm the same. It says, if a train A leaves Chicago traveling 100 miles per hour and train B leaves New York traveling 150 miles per hour, and the distance between the 2 cities is 600 miles, how far from New York will it be when the 2 trains meet? I'm not even going to attempt to do that. And this overlaps with a condition called dyscalculia. So dyscalculia and dyslexia are very closely linked. You can have one and not the other, but typically you quite likely have both. And it does not mean you are bad at maths. What it means is that in principle, you have the ideas, you know how to solve this problem. By looking at what we wrote, you could solve it in theory, but when it comes to actual practice of it coming out, the brain gives you the wrong answer. A way I explained it to someone the other day is 1 + 1 = 2. But you could say 1 + 1 = 11. And yes, that's wrong 11 because of the formula and the patterns which we've come to recognize. But in terms of visually, 1 + 1, it does make an 11. So it's not actually wrong. And it's because we live in a world which has certain rules and types, meaning you're more likely to crop across difficulties. I can see this is making a lot of people stress, so let's move on from that. What word means a single organism, being, or characteristic of a single thing or person? So you actually have to type this out. We've got individuals, ooh, nice. Yeah, the correct answer was individual. Why this is related to dyspraxia is if I was to say to you the word individual, you would all know well, I'd say the vast majority of you would know what the word individuals means. When you word it in a way which isn't how the brain has remembered it or organized it, like an organism, the brain isn't able to retrieve it. Think about going into a library. You know how to find the book because they've got all the numbers on there, but then you go into a different library and they've got an entirely different system. You can't do it. This is why people with dyspraxia find things difficult, because the way their brain retrieves information is different to how a neurotypical, someone who doesn't have dyspraxia, will retrieve things. Just a quick shout out to Louise, who solved the problem. Hats off to you. This is going to get a little bit repetitive, but hopefully you're starting to see the key differences between dyslexia and dyspraxia. Number 9, though, is what does your handwriting look like? Is it completely illegible? Messy? Is it average? People can read it, but it's no work of art? Or is it super neat? You'd put it on your fridge, it's so neat. This again is one of those things which overlaps. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but originally I mentioned dysgraphia, and dysgraphia is very much like dyslexia, but where dyslexia is focused around reading, dysgraphia is around writing. So it could be about having that like a pencil grip, like squeezing too tight on a pen, being kind of messy. I'd like to say I'm a good drawer. I know how to draw because that's one part of the brain, but my handwriting is so poor. And this does overlap with dyslexia because there's a lot of people that have dyslexia also have dysgraphia, but it's also incredibly common with dyspraxia. Sorry, so many Ds. And again, that's because there's like a slight delay in the brain. So when you're like writing, imagine you've got like a really slow computer and you start typing, nothing happens, and then it starts typing all at once. And sometimes the keys get stuck or moved about. That's quite similar to what is happening in someone with a dyspraxic mind. Clara said, I write so badly and quickly to hide my mistakes and embarrassment. I know that feeling. If I can't spell something, I'll just pretend it's really messy because I'd rather have messy handwriting than poor spelling. Dyslexia and dyspraxia can both have poor handwriting, but as always, the reason behind it is most often like a different way of processing. It could be something called masking, where you try to cover up the way you learn, or it could be just a retrieval deficit. 10. Fill in the missing word. Charades was ruined for me forever when my boss had to act out. Think of this like Cards Against the Humanities, but let's try not to be too rude. Charades was ruined for me forever when my boss had to act out. What is a word or phrase or sentence that you could say next? Oh, Rhiannon, love your glasses, by the way. Okay, let's see what we got. This is always a fun one. Cleaning someone's shoes. When my boss had to act out Lord of the Rings. Charades was ruined for me forever when my boss had to act out Stuffing a Chicken. A film. A Clockwork Orange. I love that film. Good old Stanley Kubrick. Sexy dancing. Ooh, getting a bit risque. Birth. All right, let's end on birth because who knows where this could go down. How does this relate to dyslexia or dyspraxia? Well, this one particular was for dyslexia, but does actually relate to both of them. Because if you had time, you could act it out. But if you are giving something on the spot, it can be quite difficult to play along. If any of you, ever play like Words with Friends or watch Catchphrase or Countdown or Catcher, not Chaser, sorry. It might be really frustrating because if you were given unlimited time, you would know the answer, or you'd be able to think of a witty joke or a fast comeback if someone said, I know you are, but what am I? And if you find it difficult to maybe like really fast on the button, that is very much a dyslexic and dyspraxic characteristic. People with dyslexia, however, tend to be more verbal communicators. They tend to be a lot better at being like kind of fast on it. I like to think I'm quite witty, and that's probably from having a deficit in writing and reading. I put more emphasis on my public speaking, whereas dyspraxia sometimes wants to be really witty and fast, but it's almost like your brain is thinking either too slow that it can't get it out in time, or sometimes with ADHD, too fast and you end up tripping. So you're saying a word before you're meant to be saying another word. An example could be, instead of the cat jumped over the fence, the cat jumped fence over. When you accidentally put the words in a different order. Next one. Did it take you longer to learn to tie your shoelaces than other people? So yes, I still can't tie my shoes. I can, but don't ask me for a fancy knot. Easy, barely an inconvenience.
You've spelt barely wrong.
Dyslexic.
I know I'm dyslexic, but I see spelling mistakes. They jump out at me.
No, and really, you're totally right. That's a really good point, though, is sometimes you can find it difficult to see your own mistakes, but for other people's, it's really apparent. And whether that is dyslexic people are quite good at seeing patterns and spots, but I suppose the reason why you made that mistake is that your brain just interpreted it a different way or learned it in a different method. So when you're reading it back, the brain has kind of like auto-corrected it. But yeah, good spot. A lot of you have said easy, barely an inconvenience. It took me so long. Like I was in like secondary school by the time I finally learned to tie my laces, despite being decent intelligence. I just couldn't get it. Sadly, if people can't see you doing up your buttons or doing up your zips, they assume you've got low intelligence and thus you get put in lower classes or sets. When it's not the case, it's because the hand movements and the brain movements are slightly different. We often talk about being able to see in 3D space, which is a very strong characteristic of someone with dyslexia, being able to visualize something and it being able to do it with their hands. Whereas dyspraxia, you can visualize it, but it doesn't quite translate as well. And this is why there's a bit of a mismatch when it comes to laces. For the life of me, I couldn't do buttons. Really, really difficult. Still to this day, I would rather have Velcro. Or I'll tie a fancy knot and I'll just hope that knot will last forever and I'll keep slipping my shoes in and out. Because say when you're at a game, PE, when everyone's getting dressed, I would always take me a good extra like 10 or 15 minutes to get dressed compared to everyone else, just because my shoes would take so long. April has said, I couldn't tie my shoelaces myself until I was 14. I put it down to my autism and I tie my laces using my bunny ear method. Yeah, I like that. You know, like round the tree, down the hole. I couldn't tie my shoelaces till secondary school, riding a bike due to trying to focus on too many things. So anything which requires hand-eye coordination. So this could include playing video games. It could be drawing. It could be tying your shoelaces, doing up your zipper. All of these things are very much related to dyspraxia and not so much dyslexia. So this is purely a dyspraxia symptom. Louisa said, that's how I feel with oven gloves, tying shoelaces in my flat while the fire alarm is going off. Yep, I struggle with that. I walk out with laces hanging out to go. I can resonate. Oh dear, yeah. It sounds to me that we're all in the same boat here, and it's actually nice to speak with people who feel the same way. And imagine if you didn't understand that this was part of the way your brain works, you might even think that you're not that intelligent. And this is why we're here today, to kind of recorrect those myths. This one is about innovation. So you keep sleeping through your phone alarm. Every night you keep missing your alarm. What is a creative solution, thinking outside of the box, that you could do to make sure that you wake up every single day? So Anna said, say it again, please. Why people with dyspraxia are less articulate than dyslexics? And the reason why is it's about how the brain processes information. So someone who doesn't know a word doesn't know a word. Someone with dyspraxia may not know the word, but in theory does know the word. But when it comes to kind of thinking like fast, they may not be able to retrieve that long word fast enough. And as a result, their language could come across a bit simple or basic, and people may think less intelligent, when it's not the case. It's just that the brain is taking longer to retrieve. Dyslexia, on the other hand, you may be a bit more articulate because you've been able to, you've put more effort and energy into speaking, communicating verbally because of the deficit of reading and writing. It doesn't mean you necessarily are, because again, a lot of us get our vocabulary from reading. And if you're not reading a lot, you'll naturally have a less one. So it's one of those chicken and the egg situations. So it said, often you may feel the word is there, but you don't have access at the moment. You know, like it's on the tip of my tongue, like that phrase. Anyway, let's see what some of you have put for innovative approaches. No curtains. Great one. Go to bed earlier. All right, mum. Put my phone in an empty glass to amplify the sound. Perfect. Turn my alarm on really high, get an alarm clock, put it forward 10, 15 minutes. Perfect. Vibrator under, put a phone on vibrate under the pillow. Alarm sunrise, repeat alarm, curtains. Okay, I'll have it rigged up to a wet sponge while drips. I like that. Multiple alarms. OMG, I have this all the time. I have a sunlight lamp alarm. Oh, one that naturally kind of becomes more natural light as it goes on. Fitbit buzzes, foots, suddenly. Kids wake me up early. Brilliant. So a lot of you, automatic. A lot of you have quite innovative different approaches. And this is something which is related to both, but typically done to dyslexia, is innovation. It's if your brain struggles in one way, typically it's not that you just, okay, I can't do that because I lack the mental capacity. It's not like that at all. The mental capacity is transferred to another area, and that other area could be a different solution. And I think this is why 40% of all self-made millionaires are said to be dyslexic, because they're more likely to think of creative problems, solutions. So if you meet someone who seems to get stuck on the most simple things imaginable, but somehow finds a unique way around it, that's a good sign of dyslexia. So when we talk about positives, innovation is definitely really high up on the agenda. All right, we're doing really well for time. Everyone's doing amazing. Now I'd like you to rate your communication style. Communication styles, for those of you who do not know, are the broad way in which people tend to communicate with others. So you could be a passive communicator, an assertive communicator, an aggressive communicator, or a passive-aggressive communicator. None of these are wrong, by the way, but it's worth knowing which way you communicate. And if you're not sure, there are things online like personality tests, like Myers-Briggs, which are probably a good starting point to find out what works best for you.
Is this in any particular context or situation, or?
That's a really good point. In this, we're just talking kind of general, but I do know what you mean. It can change depending on circumstance.
Okay.
And to give a perspective about why this is relevant to dyspraxia and dyslexia, when we're normally taught in either one of these ways. So either a very assertive way where someone is saying, this is what you've got to do, or someone might be instructing you in a passive-aggressive way. But as human beings, we all respond and learn in different ways. So you might be more receptive to a passive way of learning where someone is more calm and relaxed. But if someone is teaching you in an aggressive way, you may find that your brain doesn't retain the information. And what I would say to you is, if someone is getting really annoyed with you because you're just not learning what they're trying to teach with you, maybe they as a teacher should look more to themselves and think, what can they do different to match your learning style to their teaching method? That is the key way. That what separates a good teacher from an average teacher. A teacher who doesn't just know the subject, but knows how to teach it depending on her audience. Looks like we've got a very passive and assertive group today. So Louisa said, I come across as passive-aggressive, but I'm not meaning to. I'm just being passive. And that is true as well. Particularly the way that we demonstrate emotions can be interpreted in different ways by different people. So on this, I want you all out loud to try to sound out these words. And again, this is a dyslexic quality, not necessarily a dyspraxic one, though people with dyspraxia can find it challenging. The first one is from Mary Poppins. The second one is a disapproving sound. And the last one is a lung disorder, an actual real lung disorder. Someone with dyslexia would find this very, very, very difficult. And because the way that we sound out words, like, how do you even begin? How do you even begin? And I can't say for everyone, but the way that my dyslexia affects me is I read by remembering the images of words. So cat, I recognize what the letters look like rather than sounding it out. And that's great for words I've read and I've seen before. But if you show me a word I've never seen before, that's when I'm unable to read. So Louis said, I'm dyslexic but struggle with phonics. I just don't get it. I have to learn how a word is written and spoken separately. I know a written word but don't recognize it as verbal or vice versa. People with dyspraxia, on the other hand, may be able to learn these words, but might find it quite difficult to then bring them back up again when they want to say. So I have no trouble, in theory, saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but that wouldn't mean I would necessarily be able to spell it or read it had I not already memorized the picture of it, if that kind of makes sense. What body position do you have most often? We're very much near the end now. So out of these images, if you're able to see, I know they're a bit small, which one most represents how you typically hold yourself up?
Not to be a pain, but like, don't these kind of go hand in hand sometimes?
What are
Like,
the different positions?
Because forward head posture often arises anyway.
These are just the most typical way that people typically stand, but yeah, they sometimes are quite similar.
Lots of posture issues here, that's why.
Yeah. So we've got a forward head posture, like where you're a bit more over. Forward rotation shoulders, sway back, flat back. It's quite hard to see, but what we're trying to get here is that with dyslexia, your body posture should not be affected. It shouldn't make any difference. But with dyspraxia, it should, because a lot of people with dyspraxia have, unfortunately, quite poor postures. They tend to hunch a lot or, not be straight. And it's due to the coordination in their brain. Remember, the same thing which helps you ride a bike or catch a ball or write with a pencil can also be the same thing that keeps you to be like straight and like up properly. So if you've always been told off for slouching or like messing about and you just do not resonate with it and it's not conscious, you just do it, that is very much a dyspraxic tendency. And I hope you appreciate, I'm being careful with my language here because you never want to say 100% this relates to that. It varies, but if you look at most people with dyspraxia, and most of them do have trouble with keeping a correct posture. So Anya said, D2 receptors in the basal ganglia in the brain controls posture. Cool. And is it the same way when you see people running and they have a certain posture when running? Absolutely. When I walk, and Matt's probably going to be watching now, but I do it with a bit of a bop. And I don't know why my brain does it. Always got taken the mickey out for that. Just is the way it is. Or you might notice some people run a little bit funny, like a bit of a duck. We all do it in certain different ways, and it's very much a natural thing to us because the way that the brain is processing the movement, I must run or walk now, to the actual action of it can sometimes be a little bit skewed up or unconventional, shall we say. Now, that was all the fun and games, but let's do a little bit of summarizing. So dyslexia summaries. Typical difficulties. So what is dyslexia in a nutshell? Reading and spelling. Mispronunciation / retrieval of words. Completing long tasks can be difficult. And memorizing and summarizing. These are the 4 points which I would say categorize dyslexia apart from dyspraxia. So this is like what makes it unique. Now the next one is what makes dyspraxia unique. So unique is processing large information. If you gave someone with dyspraxia lots of different tasks, either verbal or written, they may struggle to process it and get out the meaning. Another word, comprehension. Bumping into or dropping things. That's, again, very much a dyspraxic tendency. Okay, and right or left hand dominance. So either you tend to some hands be good, some hands be difficult. I use my left hand for knives and forks, for things like archery, but I use my right hand for writing. If you have that kind of your brain is a bit torn, make up your mind, what hand are you? That again is a very much a dyspraxic quality, not a dyslexic one. Using buttons and zippers and anything which requires 2 motions. So if it needs 2 hands, you need this brain to work and this hand brain to work, and you get mixed up. That again is very much dyspraxia. I like it. So what are the crossovers? What things do we have similar? So both are learning difficulties, differences, disabilities. What you call it, I would say, is a personal decision, but they both come under the same kind of umbrella. They both count as a neurodivergence. 53% of dyslexics are also dyspraxic. So you're more likely to be dyspraxic if you have dyslexia than if you didn't have anything at all. And it's important to know, though, a lot of people get diagnosed with dyslexia because it's arguably more easier to diagnose or more commonly diagnosed, where dyspraxia is less commonly diagnosed. So there is quite a lot of people who can get misdiagnosed. So it's something to be aware of, but I'm not saying it's always the case. Both are great creative problem solvers. And this is in turn for two reasons. One, because life's difficult, so you find different ways of solving the problem. And two, your brain is naturally wired to be more of a creative problem solver or thinker. And lastly, both struggle to learn traditionally. Or you could word this differently and say, both learn innovatively. So you're more likely to find school challenging because of the kind of bit archaic and outdated way they teach you, are more likely to find innovation to be something which excites you. And just lastly, brilliant, Nat, you've told me the difference. Now what do? I need help. Well, you can come to us if you're looking for work, or if you're an organization looking to find some new talent, get in touch. We do workshops for free nearly every week, and we also work in corporations, so we can go to your teams, do a little bit of consultancy, you know, over a cuppa. And also if you need help with your CVs, general, what am I even good at in life? How does my brain work? We help with all of those things. But one thing I think I'd really like to let you all in on is the best kept government secret, a workplace needs assessment. So if you are currently in work and in the UK, you are nearly always eligible, if you are neurodivergent or resonate with neurodivergence, to be able to get some support. And this could be anything from a dictaphone, voice software, coaching. You can just go on our website to find out more. I would say though, if any of you are neurodivergent or work with neurodivergence, it's 100% worth at least having a look to see if you might be eligible, because the grant is there for everyone. Asterix. So, any questions or forever hold your peace? You can either say them out loud or type them on this, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can.
A good job fit for someone with dyslexia and dyspraxia?
Thanks. Many, many years of practice, I'm afraid.
It was a great job, Matt. I think he was asking what is a good job fit.
Oh, I just thought you were being nice. Ouch. No, I think a good job is something which works to your strengths. And I'm not going to say, oh, firefighter, because I think that's a bit of a cop-out. I think a good answer is find out how your brain works and find a job which utilizes that as its key strength. So do not get a job which you know you're going to struggle at, but you think you can kind of overcome. Get a job which actively is looking for, say, that innovative approach, for example, and doesn't focus so much, say, on writing or fast actions. So yeah, maybe a bit of a cop out of an answer, but hopefully I didn't want to give like a generic, you know, be a milkman. You could be anything you want in life. We've got career advice and help. I'll say I answered that.
For me, I just feel like I've really struggled with staying in work, especially because I got a business computing degree. So when it comes to IT, I'm more of the I'm more of the non-technical side. But it's been so hard, you know, having to stay in job for a long time, and I've been trying to, you know, sit down with like an organization that kind of help set things straight to kind of help me thrive at work, so that all these issues that I've had in the past would be a thing of the past, and you know I can be able to now utilize myself in any role that I find myself in the future. So I don't know if that's anything you can help with.
I think that we might be able to, though. I think the best bet for you there is to get in contact with us separately. I'll show you the information in a moment. Just to quickly tackle a few of these, because I know we're running out of time. Any ideas or hints or tips to help with structuring or drafting letters? I'm a big fan of templates. Nothing wrong with using a template. And I use Grammarly a lot. So I use, you know, the SMART thing, like, you know, different goals, or I use something called P, like point, example, explanation. There's so many different ways that you can do it. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. I think I might just have missed a few of your questions. Great work, Nat. I'll accept that as a good question. Do you have any ideas or hint or tips? So, okay, I've answered that one. Have you got any suggestions from learning in different ways? That is a difficult one, but I think if something's not working for you, rather than giving up, trying a different approach. So I find writing difficult. So instead I use my voice to write. And it might not always be the easiest thing to think of these innovative solutions to overcome it. And this is why it's probably best getting in touch with someone from our team who has worked with people in different areas. But just try and fail. I think failure is the best solution I have. Nothing wrong with a good bit of failure. Do dyslexics and dyspraxia develop over time, or are they born with it, always like it? They are born with it. So if you've had it your entire life, but you do learn to adapt and to change and to grow with it. So this is why it's more obvious or apparent in children and not adults, simply because you've just gotten better with understanding your brain. Do you have any sessions about ADHD versus dyspraxia? I seem to fit with dyspraxia. Yes, we absolutely do. Check out our Eventbrite. Okay, we've got a question from Farzana.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. I just really want to, it's something that I really wanted an answer to. I don't know if you can help me answer it. I feel I've got more symptoms of a dyspraxia, and I know it's a lifelong condition, but I feel I lose my balance more now, and I'm dropping things. I'm becoming clumsy. I didn't realise and recognise this when early on in life. It's just something I feel it's like, come on now. Is that uncommon, or is it because I probably had some of the symptoms as apparent then, but now they are?
It's a good question, and the answer I would give is that, one, it might be something completely separate, because there is such a thing as dyslexia and dyspraxia that come on later in life, but that's normally to say a brain trauma or something along those lines. Alternatively, you could have had it your entire life, but different circumstances, situations, and environmental causes meant that it didn't seem such an issue. You might be aware of something that's happened in your life or circumstances that have changed. So it's hard for me to say straight away, but it very much could be something which is just appears more obvious now because there's added stress or something completely different.
But it's definitely a lifelong condition, either way.
Either way, it's a lifelong condition, but that doesn't mean you have to struggle for your entire life, because there are coping mechanisms which you can find.
Yeah, all right, so it could be a sign of stress that's probably triggered it more, and everything's... Yeah.
Absolutely. Stress is an awful thing. It can make any of your symptoms far, far more like obvious or severe.
I think especially with COVID has brought out a lot of like OCD behaviors, or made your symptoms worse. That's what my psych was saying. So COVID's been a huge, we have underestimated the impact it's had on us, I think.
Well, thank you so much. So here's the information if you want to get in contact. This webinar today will be uploaded to YouTube. And we do have webinars for the whole year booked up, so we're extra proactive. But I really hope you found that useful. It's been so great to see so many of you today. It's very heartwarming, and I hope you all are keeping safe.
Final question, if that's all right.
All right, go for it.
Right, so Exceptional Individual has just helped me to get a grant and put in place for me lots of very helpful software and the training and everything through my workplace. I was just wondering though, if I wanted to change career and do something like what you're doing, which may be more suited for me with dyslexia and dyspraxia, how do I go about that?
Good question. If you change jobs, you're still eligible to redo the grant all over again, because it's a different set of circumstances. And if you want to get involved with something like this, I would look on either non-profit jobs or charity jobs. A website I've used in the past is charityjobs.org, I think, or .com. And a good place to start is also volunteering. So starting off in a place, showing you've got value to add, and then when a position comes available, you're not always the first one to call. I know with Exceptional Individuals, nearly all of our new hires have all come from people who have volunteered with us previously, because we know they're great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, and thank you so much. It's been great having you.